Hi friends, today I'm going to read you a book called Yucky Worms by Vivian French and pictures by Jessica Alberg. And this worm is saying, "We're not yucky. I'm very nice. How rude." All these worm paths. Yucky worms. One day, when I was in Grandma's garden, Grandma dug up a slimy, slithery, wiggly worm. "Yuck," I said. "Throw it away." "Throw it away?" Grandma looked horrified. "Would you throw away one of your friends?" "You can't be friends with a worm," I said. "You can't even tell which end is which." "Yes, you can. Watch." Grandma put the worm down. It gave a kind of squirmy wriggle and disappeared really fast, pointy end first. As the rounded end vanished, Grandma said, "There goes its tail." I bent down to look, and I could see it had left a little tunnel. "Where did it go?" I asked. "Home," Grandma said. "It is an earthworm. It lives underground." In most backyards, there will be about 15 worms in every square yard of soil. And here is a diagram or a map of a worm. There is the mouth where the food goes in. Here is the brain. Here's the esophagus where the food goes next. And the crop where the worm stores food. And the gizzard where the food is ground up. And here is a worm has 5 pairs of hearts. Here's the clitellum, which is a pale ring found only in adult worms. And its skin is covered in mucus for easier reeling. Here's the intestine, where goodness from the food is absorbed into the bloodstream. And here's the bum, where the poop comes out. But what does it eat? Dirt? I wanted to know. It eats tiny, tiny stones and bits of dirt, Grandma told me. But worms eat other things too, like rotting leaves and flowers and fruit and dead insects. They especially like eating at night when it is cool. The stones and dirt help to grind everything up in the worm's stomach, and then the worm poops it back out. Moldy. Dirt is good for you. Worms come above ground to find things to eat. They then pull their food back down and as they wriggle into the ground again. This says, "Nice and rotten, just how I like it." This worm is sleeping. Grandma pointed at the flower bed. "Look, can you see?" I bent down and I saw what looked like a weird, long, curly worm made out of dirt. "That is worm poop," Grandma said. "It is called a cast. You know when we recycle things? Well, worms do it too. There is still a lot of goodness left in the things a worm eats. And then, when the goodness comes out again as poop, it helps plants grow big and strong. And as the worms move around under and on top of the soil, the poop gets spread around the garden." That is why worms are my friends. Grandma gave me a thumbs up, and it is not just their poop that is good for plants. The tunnels they dig loosen the soil, so roots can stretch out and air and rainwater can get in. Look at all those tunnels. Worm poop is so fine and crumbly, it never blocks their tunnels. A square yard of soil there will be about 4 yards of earthworm tunnels. Some people call worms underground farmers. Worms can wriggle backward and forward. Oops, I forgot something. Better reverse. Wriggle, wriggle, wriggle. "But it is dangerous being a worm," Grandma said. I stared at her. "Dangerous?" I asked. She smiled at me. "Lots and lots of animals think worms make a most delicious dinner. Birds love them, and so do moles, badgers, and frogs. Hedgehogs and foxes, even some slugs eat worms, and human beings accidentally slice through them with spades and spike them with forks. It is a tough life." "Cutting them in half doesn't hurt them, Grandma," I said. "They just turn into 2 worms and keep on growing." Grandma shook her head. "Poor worms. Lots of people think that, but it is not true." She put her fork down. Time for a snack. "A worm's tail can regrow if it's cut off, but cutting a worm in half will kill it." And here's a mole saying, "Shopping list, worm, 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 worm." And this worm is saying, "That was close." think I'll hide down here. Bird alert! There's a mole over there. Grandma had tea and I had orange juice. Can I dig up a worm, I asked. If it rains, Grandma said, the worms will come out on their own. I took a cookie. What if it doesn't rain? Grandma winked at me. We'll use the watering can and pretend. I finished my cookie as fast as I could. Can we trick the worms now? Worms don't breathe through their skins. They don't mind if the soil around them is being wet. But if their tunnels are flooded, they come up to the surface to move around more easily. Grandma filled the watering can and I watered the ground. Then I stood back. I didn't want worms chewing at my shoes. They only pull their heads out, Grandma promised, and they do it. It'll be a while before they do it. When it is hot, very hot, and the soil gets too dry to slither through, a worm will wriggle down to where the soil is still damp and curl up and wait for rain. And when it is very cold, a worm will wriggle down even deeper below the frost level and curl up with other worms for warmth. Ooh, cozy. That's better. Phew. Grandma was right. I had time to eat 2 more cookies before she said, "Look." "Wow," I said. I could just see the tip of a worm above the ground. Now watch this. Grandma stamped her foot and the worm disappeared. "Did you see it?" I asked. Grandma shook her head. "Worms don't." "Oh, did it see you?" I asked. Grandma shook her head. "Worms don't have eyes. They feel vibrations, though, and a thump like that might mean a hungry bird is landing. Danger." They learn things by feeling the vibrations. Grandma dug her fork into the ground. Up came lots of dirt and wriggly worms. She picked one up and washed it in the watering can. "Mustn't drop it," she said. "They can't swim." But Grandma put the clean worm on some paper and held it near my ear. I could hear a tiny rustling noise. "What is that?" "They're covered in little bristles," Grandma said. "Their bristles and their muscles help them move." A worm has rigid muscles all along its body. To move, it pushes its front end forward and uses its bristles to hold on that end in place while the back catches up. The bristles on the back end keep the worm from sliding backwards, while the front end tunnels forward again in the earth. Away I go. Wow, look at these bristles. I've got muscles too. I bent my arm so Grandma could see. "If you've got so many muscles," she said, "maybe you'd like to help me plant my sunflower seedlings." "Okay," I agreed, and then I thought of something. "When I go to school on Monday, I'm going to say that I've got lots of new friends." "Good idea," Grandma said. "But," I said, "I might not actually say they are worms." How to be a wormologist. Look for worm casts in your garden or in the park, leaves sticking up out of the ground, worms on the surface after it rains. Experiment by watering a dry patch of grass or dirt and watching to see if worms come up. Tapping on the ground to see if you can make a worm believe it is raining. Carefully digging up a forkful of dirt and counting how many worms you find. A worm in the hand. When you pick up a worm, remember to be respectful. A worm is a living creature. Check how it feels. Is it smooth? Is it slimy? Can you feel the bristles? Watch it move. Is it a youngster or an adult? Adults have a clitellum, a yellow ring around their body. Put the worm back in a newly dug soil and watch how it wriggles away. Always wash your hands after touching worms. This says, "Bye, hope you like us now." Easy. End. So friends, I was thinking that a fun thing to do today might be a wormologist and go see if you can find worms and notice anything about them. All right, hope you enjoyed. Bye.